teissTalk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us, and welcome once again to teissTalk. I hope you all had a good week missing us last week. As you know, we're on a fortnightly rota at the moment. We have got a great show for you today. We are talking about why your non-cyber colleagues aren't listening to you. I mean, I think we can all answer that question because we're a bit boring, right? But nonetheless, it's going to be a good conversation. Anyway, so we've got, as always, the teissTalk mug ready and waiting to be sent to you, to the person who delivers the best question or comment. They will win the teissTalk mug, as you can see on the screen right now. All you have to do, it's different to last season. All you have to do is in the chat, type in your question, and the Teiss elf, goblin, or gnome, whomever's at the back, will make sure that we are made aware of it, and we will ask your question. If it's good, if it keeps us on our toes, or even if it just makes me giggle a little bit, you could be up to win it. It's quite coveted, actually, apparently. Not sure why, but hey, let's make it your day today. So without further ado, let me please invite onto stage Lisa and Dom. Hello, Lisa.
Hi, Tom.
And
Dom.
hello, Dom.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Lisa.
We should have had a Dennis as well, which would have rounded us off as, well, like a kids' TV show. It's the Dom, Dennis and Lisa show. But unfortunately, he's running a bit late at the moment, so I'm sure he'll pop in, and we'll keep any of the difficult questions for him when he arrives. Let's start off like we normally do with a news item, which the URL should be popping up on your screen right now. It's from Dark Reading, and it says how to get your board on board with security. Now, the wonders of technology have meant that I can't see this article for some reason. Not entirely sure why. Saw it yesterday, gave it a good peruse, and I'm going to ask. Let me start with you, Lisa. Surely getting your board on board with cybersecurity is simple. You just make a few slides with some bright primary colors, keep it simple, get in, get out, bang, you're done.
You would think so. This particular article, I know, was written by Dan Raywood, who's now at Dark Reading and was at InfoSec magazine previously.
Friend of the show, Dan Raywood.
Yeah, and I've talked to him in the past about this subject quite a bit, and I said you would think it is, but I think the reality is that our non-cyber colleagues, per se, they just don't get that they need to take cybersecurity seriously, and that's particularly so for the small businesses and SMEs. I've had conversation after conversation with them where they'll just say to me, "Oh, but we're too small. We don't need to worry about it. They're not even going to look at us." Until then, I start pointing out about things like you do, and what about your supply chain and things like that. So I can't believe in 2023 we're still having this discussion. But I think we do have a long way to go to start getting a lot of boards, and particularly on those SMEs and smaller businesses, to start taking cybersecurity seriously.
I think I read a stat somewhere that said that something like 50% of all cyber attacks are on companies with less than 25 people or something like that. You know, it's quite incredible. So and also those smaller companies, they don't have boards at the end of the day, or very rarely have boards. They're often much smaller. But I mean, we could replace the word board here with leadership, right, Dom?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the article itself, it's a great read. I think Dan makes some really good points, and the first one, I mean, we talk about it all the time, speaking the language of senior leadership. And we've been talking about this for years. But what does it actually mean? And I've sort of wrestled with this a lot, and actually I render it down to, do you know what? I understand what they're doing. Think in terms of how they see the world, which is making money, delivering an impact, helping customers. And once you get that bit, then you can start actually talking to them and saying, look, if you let me do security, I'll make sure that you can make your target, that you can keep your customers happy, that you keep being that trusted supplier that someone goes to. And at that point, I think then people will start to get it. And so the part of the issue, I think, is as much us as it is them. Yeah.
There's a strong education piece on this. I mean, I've heard it said that if translate your security problem into a golfing analogy, for instance, depends on your board really, but your mileage may vary or your yardage may vary if it's golf. But it's making it. We often hear this thing, speaking the language of the board, but it's almost simpler than that, isn't it?
Can I?
Yeah, go for it.
So, can I come in with a real life example that I had of this not long ago? So, I got asked to go and evaluate a 2-day cyber awareness training course, which is held at the PGI Cyber Academy at Bristol. And off I go. And there was about, I'd say, 20 to 25 people who were all sort of lawyers or from accountancy or those kind of backgrounds. And they were all there to learn about cybersecurity, to take that back to their business. Well, the course was run by 2 guys that were really knowledgeable, great at what they did, but incredibly techie, for want of a phrase. And they were talking with all the jargons and the acronyms and DDoS this. And you could just see the audience was just totally glazed over. They just didn't get it at all. And I can remember spending my time in the lunch breaks and the sort of mid-morning and afternoon coffee breaks talking to a lot of people and saying, well, when they said this, they meant this. And this is what a DDoS attack actually is. And so, we get it now. We understand it. And so that was my feedback to them was, you need your technical person there for sure, but you need someone else there as well that can almost decrypt what the technical person is saying and translate it into much easier and to understand language.
Far too many TLAs, right, Dom?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We love a TLA. We love that alphabet soup. I'm kind of open. I didn't come into this world through a sort of a computing background. Mine's very much the other side of the house, sort of law enforcement, discipline service, that risk piece. And so trying to keep it simple is key for me. But actually sort of thinking that's part of the problem. We talk in the terms that we find really sort of comfortable for us, but not necessarily thinking about other people that might not have that level of knowledge. And it's really easy. And it's a human frailty, I suggest, that you revert to what's easy. So I think actually today's CISO, today's head of security has got to have those soft skills to be able to go, actually, I need to think about who it is I'm talking to, whether it's the board, whether it's people down on the factory floor, or even I would suggest the IT engineers. You've got to be that person for everyone. So I think that's a real skill that you have to develop.
There's a great question that's come up from John Acornley, who's made an early dash for the lead in the race for the mug. But doesn't leadership need to be able to talk the same language as those responsible for security? So is the onus really on us?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we are sort of the purveyors of security. But I think that leads to a broader question. We're all security, whether we're in marketing, whether we're in audit, we're in procurement, even the people in the post room. We've all got a function in that. And I think, again, that's one of the challenges that we've sort of engineered. We've treated security as this silo, this, let's talk to security when we're ready to go live with a project, or, feels a bit strange. And actually, we want people to have security inside them, embedded within their being, so to speak, so that they don't have to think about, let's give it to someone else. They're secure just in nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And in fact, the phrasing "we take security seriously," which is on every single breach notification, but also security is everybody's responsibility. I mean, that last one is kind of almost joining the ranks of "we take security seriously." It's almost like it's just lip service now, in a sense. It's become so commonly used, it's overlooked without it actually being embraced.
It is, but I would suggest, right, and for those of us of a certain age, you'll remember in the days when you didn't have to wear a seatbelt in a car, right? And we used to go around, and I sort of remember fond old days driving down to the southwest on holiday, and just sitting in the back of a Cortina. But the point being, then we changed the law because actually it's kind of we wanted to reduce deaths, and everybody has to wear a seatbelt. Now, when you get in a car, it's not the fact that there's a law that says you'll get fined 20 quid. When you don't put a seatbelt on, you feel inherently insecure.
And your car beeps at you a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. But the point is, it's kind of there. It's within us to actually be secure by default. And I think that's where certainly I've always wanted to take security. So it is within us, but you do it by default. You don't think about it in that sense.
And it did take a generation, right, Lisa? I mean, we're not talking about stuff that happened overnight. I often use this story. It took my mother probably 20 years before she put a seatbelt on before she left the end of the road. Now, it is, as Dom says, it's automatic. So how long should we be waiting for this sort of these sorts of changes, Lisa?
Well, this is it. And looking at the seatbelt analogy, was the early 80s when that came into force. But that was a law. That was a mandatory law. You could get fined if you don't do this. So then the question arises, should security and security awareness be absolutely compulsory, mandatory, or even part of law, or even in terms of, I don't know, health and safety law, for example, or anything like that, or that it comes in that every organization has to do this, that has to have that sort of level, or has to maintain that cyber awareness training for all their employees. Maybe that's the only way it's going to start embedding in, and organizations will start going, hang on, we do need to do this, and we do need to take it more seriously, because it was nobody thought about doing the seatbelts, but it was a law change that brought that in. So maybe this needs to be something similar.
Yeah, we've now we've pretty much moved squarely into the panel proper of why our non-cyber colleagues aren't listening to us. Somebody on here has mentioned, or SY, I guess, I don't know. How long has it taken to embed safety culture? Security is playing catch up. Yeah, I would agree with that. Although I'd also say lack of security rarely tends to kill or maim people. Whereas poor safety on a work site is going to end up poorly for some. So maybe it's about incentive. I don't know. But yeah, so I want to pick up on your training and awareness element there, Lisa. Because that's where, in many cases, that's our primary formal interface with our, I was going to say users, with our people. We're the only industry, along with drug dealers, who call our people users. So not quite the right way we want to be remembered for. But that's our primary interface with our people, and we're still not able to engage with them effectively, even in that specific mandated, to your point about it being in law, mandated piece of training. Why not?
Absolutely. And for me, what I do is use as many real world examples that apply directly to the individual's day-to-day lives. So, for example, if I can get people thinking about something like the WhatsApp scam that's been doing the rounds, the mum and dad one, even my own cousin got caught out by that, because she's out and about at the time. In comes this WhatsApp message. She straight away thinks that it's her daughter, my other cousin, and literally sends a load of money from Santander. Now, Santander did refund her the money, but it was a long, drawn out process, etc. And if I can use those examples to just say, look, even if on the surface you think it might be your son, your daughter, a family member, whatever, just stop for that 1 second and just think about it before you do anything, or just just look and think, would they really write like that? Is that how they would come across, and so on? Because it can be just so easy to get caught out. And so those are the sort of examples that I will use within my training. If I can bring that back to those real world examples to get them thinking in their personal lives to be a lot more safer online than what they do, that will hopefully cascade down into the individual's work lives as well. I will stop them to think, maybe I shouldn't click on that link, or maybe I should look into that a little bit more before I do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does. We mustn't forget actually that sometimes it's not necessarily that they haven't, or that our people haven't learned something, including us. That we haven't learned something. It's the fact that we are often attacked, we are often targeted at our weakest moments, or at our most vulnerable moments. I'll give an example that I had a few months ago. My son had his phone stolen from the table in the restaurant. We didn't get it back. We activated lost mode. I put my phone number on there, to say contact me should it go into the better hands than the person who took it. And then, of course, I got a number of, hey, this is Apple. We found your phone. Log in here to find out where it is. And in the heat of the moment, I clicked the link and then suddenly realised what on earth I'd done. So no details were submitted. But even people who know this stuff, you're in that moment. You want that phone back. You believe that the right people are contacting you. It's not surprising, is it?
Yeah, and I think maybe some of the. Oh, sorry, Lisa.
No, go on.
Go on, Dom.
I was saying, and maybe it's the way that we train people, and you think of all the sort of training packages that it's always about punitive. If you do this, it will result in something bad happening to you. You look at phishing testing that we do. We focus on the number of people that clicked on the link, and actually, I think maybe it's because we should be looking at saying we should be rewarding it. The number of people that reported it. That's really cool thing to be doing. Actually incentivize people, saying, look, these things do happen, but we'd rather that you actually speak to us. There's not a blame culture here to go, oh, silly you gave all your money. It's like, look, we know that humans fall for these things. It's about what can we do to help you. Maybe it's just a different way of getting people to learn. It's a bit sort of reading Diary of a CEO at the moment, and he's talking about how you influence is don't disagree with people. If you find common ground, people actually come along with you a lot quicker than they do if you say, that was bad. Immediately the defences come up and you've shut down the conversation.
Yeah.
And just coming in on that, Don, I think people are, even if there is a no blame culture with the cost of living crisis, with the way the world is at the moment, I think a lot of people are a bit loath to speak up if they click on something inadvertently because of fear for their jobs, because of the way the world is.
I think that's on us as leaders to actually sort of embedding that. I've had people, I've done X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be in trouble. I'm saying, look, I'm not going to sort of want to tell you off for that. I'm glad that you've come and told me, and we can work on this. And there's education and there's things we can talk to you about, but I don't want you to be fearing for your job because you've made a human error, that any of us could have fallen for. I mean, I put my hands up, I've fallen for on the old phishing simulation tests, and you're like, I should have known better. But actually, it drives me to then think, well, actually, next time I'll look a bit quicker.
It helps reinforce better behaviour in the future. Yeah. I got a terrible example of how sometimes security can be seen as so adversarial and as the enemy. In that, a good friend of mine, he working for a company that was proposing, it was proposed by IT, that failure or clicking on a link in a phishing test more than 3 times resulted in disciplinary action, up to and including termination. And his response was, okay, but that should also stand for the IT team for every phishing email they let into the system, right? Because it shouldn't even be there in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it got discarded. It was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, fair enough, But but it is that attitude, that sort of, slap you until you're going to do it right, that doesn't seem to work.
No.
There's something, a statement here from Sarah Templey, actually, I've been meaning to get to. Isn't it more likely to stick if you can make security simple to do rather than legislating to do it? Does compliance only drive a minimum level? Well, yes, I think is probably the short answer to that. Should we be making this as simple as possible?
Yeah. But it's how simple do you go? I mean, I let's take you home. Yeah. You will be told whether you're Microsoft or iOS, there's a security update you need to do. And how many of us, and how simpler is that it pops up and it tells you to do it? I'm talking about the legitimate ones here, but how many of us just go, yeah, I'll click the do it later? How much more simpler can we make it?
Yeah,
we can tell people, each time you do it later, you never do it, and then eventually you get unpatched, and then you get that debate of.
But it's intrusive, though, isn't it? It's intrusive. Training can be. Running patches, etc., can be intrusive. It gets in a way where everybody's under pressure to get the work done, etc., etc. It's difficult. I don't disagree with you. Some of this stuff is basics.
But that's the tension, isn't it? That on one hand we're saying, oh, it's terrible, we keep getting hit, and then on the other hand we're saying, for convenience, we'll just put it off, that's the bit
convenience trumps security every time.
It's the perennial call, exactly.
Yeah.
And we
need to make it as convenient and as simple as possible, right?
And then as soon as we say, right, well, we'll do it for you, don't worry, you pretty little heads about that, we will say, hang on, that's really intrusive. So I think it's a spectrum. And it's trying to find that sweet spot, and that is the holy grail for us, I think, as security and end users, as it were.
So let's do a little exercise here. Just it's from a question by Tristram Hollenbrook. A little exercise. So the question was: so how do we take something like Tom's son's missing phone and follow up into language and training that resonates at work where things are more serious? I don't know why he thinks my son's stolen phone isn't serious, but nonetheless, So just let's have a quick 2 minutes on how do we take a situation like that. It's a real world, scenario. It's one that we all can actually relate to at some point. We all know somebody who's had their phone stolen or lost, or it's happened to us, right? How do we translate that into the more serious element of cybersecurity? No pressure.
No. I think actually that's the whole point. We are and taking the phone. This is just a ubiquitous part of life. And what it demonstrates is, whether you're at work, you're at home, there is something of value to someone, and it's sitting in your hands. And if you lose it, there'll be some sort of impact. I think the days of sort of trying to segregate them out and say it's just a work thing and there's an inherent value in it. I think actually all of our lives sit on that small 4-inch piece of carbon in your hand, and that's what I'm trying to say. If you lose that, you lose so much more. And that's as simple as I would render it anyway.
And sadly for me as well, I've seen that no matter how simple you make something even like that, until an organization or somebody has had something happen to them, they're just not going to take it. No matter how simple you make something, no, we'll just park that to one side. I think as awful as it is, something has to happen to them to actually get it embedded in. Oh my God, this really could happen, to me and happen to my organization. It's
almost, and I don't wish to move into the sort of psychology element here. I'm barely qualified to do security, let alone psychology. But it's almost that, remember that feeling when you lost your phone, you clicked a link, etc. And how vulnerable you felt, etc. Well, it's the same triggers are being used, the same strings are being pulled when someone's spearfishing you, or or sending, trying to get some details from you under pressure, etc., and recognizing that kind of element. And I think we've spoken a lot about education and awareness, but I think as to why our colleagues aren't listening to us, but I think it's an important element of it. It's that being able to relate to somebody, or rather get them to relate to what we are trying to do.
Absolutely. And we saw during the pandemic straight away, didn't we, how they were jumping on that vulnerability that we had, getting us to click on stuff on the government payments, etc. They will be looking all the time for the latest thing that they can jump on.
Yeah.
And if I could come in a little bit on generative AI and ChatGPT as well, because in the past, it may have been easier to pick up on what a phishing email is by looking at the spelling, the grammar, the way it's written. And with the impact of ChatGPT coming in, a lot of the scammers will be using that to generate their phishing emails as well. It is getting that little bit harder now to realize that what you're looking at is actually a phishing email. You have to hover on the links and look for any sort of spoofing of domains and things like that. But the actual broad text, it's really easy now, if they're using that to put them together, to think this is actually genuine.
Yeah.
And I sort of just pivot slightly, because I was just sort of thinking, as you talk about the Gen AI, actually the pace of change, and linked to that, who our audience is, and obviously.
Oh, have we lost Dom?
We get older, younger, but active thinking and working, that to us, you'd go, there is absolutely no way I'm going to stick X, Y, and Z on TikTok, and yet they're quite happy to do. And you'd think, are we being reactionary, or do we actually have to think, we've got to talk to the youth of today in a completely different way that we would talk to colleagues or senior leadership, and find actually how do they take it in, because otherwise it just comes across like your dad telling you off all the time. Perhaps.
So Dom, what you're saying is that you and I are over the hill and past it, right? That's we're
Long
done
time
for.
ago. Absolutely.
We're not down with the kids, in it.
No. Although I'm always amazed at the levels that my children go to, and their grasp of technology, and it is kind of frightening when I've got children spinning up Minecraft servers here, there, and everywhere, and you think that's pretty impressive for a 9-year-old.
I remember spending hours doing that, with trying to get a Doom server running, as an adult, let alone as a 9-year-old.
But that's the point. Then we got to start thinking, actually, how do you? Because if we can embed a level of security in them, actually this becomes easy. And mine are like, no, I'm not going to go onto YouTube, because I know there's some weird people out there that might do X, Y, and Z. And you think, brilliant. So you inherently understand the wrong and the right things to do in that environment. So maybe that's where we have to start looking. And I think it's really important, if we get into, the education system and ICT courses at that level. I think
it's potentially a generational thing. Potentially our kids are actually far more aware than we give them, credit for. The people entering the workforce now, well, they probably don't click on anything, let alone a phishing email. So
I did a little bit of that sort of bit you do when you've got kids. You go to the school and you do your presentation. What does my dad do? So I did a cybersecurity presentation for the year 7. I know the year 6 set up their own little digital council, and they'd written probably one of the best infosec policies I've ever seen. And you think they've thought about it, and you think, right, I could employ a few. But it was that sort of thing, and that was really heartening to see. And you sort of run a few exercises with them, and they absolutely got what we're trying to do. So I'm kind of positive for the future in that sense.
So Lisa, there's a question here from John Acornley, which I'm gonna get up on the screen for you. It says, shouldn't every organization have someone who is responsible for security? I'd like to think leadership can trust CISOs to deliver strong security, but sadly, I'm not sure that CISOs are doing this sometimes because of factors beyond their control. which is very true. You know,
Yeah.
budget, resources, you know, all that sort of stuff. So I think what John's saying here is like a security representative, like something like
Or
that.
security champion, or something like that.
Champion,
I've been in organisations where I've run cyber awareness programs where they've had a good cybersecurity champion program as well, and I think that all organizations, no matter what their size, should have, you know, somebody sort of in that role. I mean, to me, it's a little bit like you've got your physical first aiders, but you should also have your mental health first aiders as well. And many organizations still don't do that today. So I think embedding that security culture, no matter what the size of the organization, absolutely having a, you know, security champion, for want of a phrase, or security ambassador, or whatever you want to call it, it is absolutely critical. And I think that there's an education piece as well to be done to organizations of all sizes around that, so that again it empowers, you know, people to be thinking about the, you know, security within their organization. And delegate, maybe delegating is not the right word, but just, you know, sharing out again that responsibility. And yeah, that phrase has been used, you know, a million times. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility, and it is such a cliche, but it really, really is. And if we can get everybody thinking about it from that level, and as I said, from the personal side of things, that will cascade down hopefully into the business environment.
Yeah. I think we mentioned it on our briefing call yesterday about, you know, cybersecurity isn't funny. It's not a funny subject. It doesn't mean it can't be fun. And I'm a great proponent of humor in security, etc., because it generates that sort of visceral feeling, that chemical change in the brain. You know, when people are enjoying themselves, when they're laughing about serious subjects, etc., when they're engaging, it's actually making a difference. Do you think part of our problem is that we take ourselves too seriously?
Yeah, I think we do. I think as a discipline, you know, people see us as the cops, as the people that you go to as the last point of call. And actually, the way that I try and sell it and into my business is, look, I'm your critical friend. I actually want you to do well. I want to be the guy that says, yes, that's a really good idea. However, you know, there are challenges, but if you want to get to X, let's work together. And you have to go through that whole process of people coming to you at the last knocking saying, is it secure? But actually saying, but do you know what? I accept that. Next time, let's get together early stages and start talking about how you can do this really important thing. So it's a little bit of, it's the soft skills. It's saying, look, I'm here with you. I'm part of the firm. I'm part of the business. I mean, again, that's something that I rail against when in technology you talk about the business, and actually saying, look, we're one firm. We're all part and parcel. We've all got a part to play. You know, we might not be bringing the fees in, but we're certainly supporting those that are. So we should see ourselves. And if we take that kind of attitude, then maybe people are going to listen a bit more because we're listening.
Yeah. And I think as well, particularly with the smaller businesses, focusing on the financial impact of a cyber attack and the reputational impact of a cyber attack, because I've seen small businesses just close down overnight because of a cyber attack, because they've just lost everything, you know, as a result.
And because they're small, we don't hear about them, basically.
Precisely, absolutely.
The Sony hacks or the I'm trying to think of some others off the top of my head, but still Sony.
And that is part of the problem, John, because we're hearing about these really high-profile cyber attacks, which are really important. Don't get me wrong. We've just had MGM in the last week or so, huge one out in Las Vegas. And small businesses will see those larger ones. Okay, they've been hit. And they can almost breathe a sigh of relief of, oh, we really are too small, because they're targeting these big boys. And the media aren't focusing on those smaller businesses that lose everything and lose their complete livelihoods overnight as a result of a cyber attack.
And let's face it, CISOs around the world breathe a sigh of relief when a larger company gets hit, because it wasn't them this time. Right? You know, it's you know, it's not if, it's when, etc., etc.
Yeah, and it's up there with that myth, the myth you always hear. This was a complicated and sophisticated attack that brought us down. And then you go, oh, is that vulnerability that we all knew about?
Yeah.
You know, and actually then we have to sort of look inwardly and say, do you know what it is? The simple stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if you look after the asset inventory, making sure you've got a patch regime in place, you know, all of that stuff, it's not the real fun CTI, you know, malware detection, threat hunting. It's the real mundane running a business like a business that will keep you safe. And if we can get people to understand that and actually demystifying security in a way, you know, to go, look, it's the health of the firm, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and again, it makes us more approachable. We're not the guys in the basement sort of growling at people.
You know, Don, one of the very first public talk I did was on demystifying cybersecurity back in 2012. And we're still having that conversation now. That was at Worcestershire County Council.
But isn't that the way though, that it is the same things and nothing, it's almost nothing ever actually changes, but then it all changes, and it, you know, and I think we've got to keep the faith.
Yeah.
To message and recognize, you know, that's probably our lot, but you know, at least if we're positive and we keep doing that, then somebody somewhere might take notice, and that's a win. In my book anyway. You know,
and I think we do need to plan. Yes, 2012 is a long time ago in fairness, but we do need to plan more long term. I think part of our problem is we are, well, very often, because as CISOs, as security executives, etc., one, we're measured on failure very often. You know, there's this many failures, therefore this is how well you've done or how badly you've done. But I think part of it, as a result of that, we are always trying for the quick fix with it. Let's run this phishing campaign, this awareness campaign, that'll fix everything. And it doesn't. It takes, like the seatbelt thing, a long time to make real lasting change. I know we're circling back, you know, on the safety culture thing, etc., because there are different elements to this, but you know, it does take a long time to really enforce this. And in fact, on the safety culture thing, we had health and safety legislation coming in and support that. And let's face it, health and safety became a bit of a curse word in many places for the longest time. I can't do that, health and safety, mate. You know, it's, you know, so that went through very similar kind of stages as security has.
But actually, that's really interesting, because if you do a health and safety course and you really grow, you actually start to realise, again, we're doing this for all the right reasons, to protect people. And if you understand how that legislation works, you go, well, actually, if I do the right thing, it lets me do more things. And so there's that part that we have to sell to people, to go, it's not about clipboards, it's not about ticking the boxes, it's about living.
Yeah. Why am I doing this? Well, because 100 people die a year from not doing that. Okay, I think I'll do that then. You know?
Well, look at how far we've come from the mid-70s with, and again, I'm going to show my age now, with Blue Peter and John Noakes climbing up Nelson's column, you know, completely unaided, no ropes, no anything, and look how far we've gone now. And I'd like to think that cyber will go that same way, that embedded, you know, change and culture.
Well, the 70s never did me any harm, you know.
No.
Exactly. We'll all start talking about wagon wheels getting smaller.
What's this comment from Tristram? We're so much safer in the Blue Peter in the 70s. Yeah, absolutely. It's just health and safety gone mad nowadays. Right, on that point, we're drawing to a close. So we've got a few minutes. So I know I normally give my guests on here just 10 seconds, but I'm going to let you both wax lyrical for a little bit. In summary, you what's the thing that our audience needs to do when they get back to their desk tomorrow on something like this? What's one or two practical things that they can do to help change the attitude of their non-cyber colleagues to them? And Dom, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. Listen. Be open to other people's ideas. We don't own the monopoly on. But listening and going, okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Then perhaps we can change how we operate, and in turn that changes how other people operate. So yeah, listen. If you're going in at senior level, be bold, be simple, be out of there. You want to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. And then finally, get to know your finance team, because if you're going to need security, they need to become your best friend. And again, you want to understand the intricacies of how they do finance, how they report. That's the sort of practical things that they're not comfortable bedfellows, but get to know them. They will help you.
Yeah, very good. And Lisa?
Absolutely, quite similar in terms of listening and taking those suggestions and feedback and embedding that in, and keeping it as simple as possible. And I totally agree with Dom. Make friends with your finance team, because you will need them to do security well.
Brilliant. I'm also going to add in there, have some fun with it, because that's how people remember.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you both so much for your time today. We're drawing to a close. I've got a few closing announcements to make, obviously. First off, our next teissTalk is on the 5th of October, so a week and a half away. Sorry, 2 weeks away. And that's on securing your industrial IoT. That'll be with me again and some wonderful guests. We've also got the TICE R3 conference. That's Resilience, Response and Recovery. And that's coming up on Tuesday. And if you would like Lisa's autograph, you can see her there on Tuesday because she and I are presenting, hosting, standing
We're
up.
hosting, aren't we?
Yeah, standing up at the front and talking stuff. Well, we'll both be there, so you can see us there as well. You've only got, I think it's either today and maybe tomorrow to register for that. So if you are in town, please do come along. All that remains for me is to award our TICE mug. Whoops, I know it's the favourite part of the show. I am going to reward it to Tristram Hollenbrook. And the reason for that is he confessed on the chat that he's going to steal his finance director's phone. I think that's quite a ballsy move there, Tristram. We've got you back. Go do it, and then come back in a couple of weeks and let us know how it went and how they delivered your P45 to you. So on that note, all it remains for me to say is thank you very much. Thank you to our guests again, Lisa and Dom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the rest of you, don't forget to stay secure, my friends. Goodbye.
Yeah.